Welcome to Power Rankings, presented by the long-lasting power of Energizer.
Still going.
Not today, no today, in time, and be sure to tell all who will listen, you remember when you watched us wield our How Good Is Your Team hammer on Thursday, along with authoring our Power Rankings. This man right here, Dan, designed the holiday board game sensation. Shoots and shoots, Jets and Jaguars, race to the bottom edition. Hopefully that's going well, Dan. I know shipping a bit of a concern right now.
Shipping is a concern. Get your orders in early because it is going like hot cakes.
I can imagine. Everybody excited. All right, we're off. You start at the top in the game, you know what I mean? And then you finish at the bottom because it's just shoots.
Got it.
Shoots. All right, let's get to the top. Back to the top. And that is the Power Rankings 1 through 8. No change between the 1 and 2 and 3 spot. Kansas City, Pittsburgh, and Nolans. They're 1, 2, and 3. And I believe we had a little bit of a hiccup there. That looked like the wrong board because that was the Rams at number 4, which is no longer the case, Dan. In your new Power Rankings board, you got yourself the Seahawks, who have made a big move toward the top.
Yes, the Seahawks are a team that I last week thought, who is the number 4 team? That was something I struggled with in this exercise a week ago. And then they go and deliver a big-time defensive performance. And it's exactly what you need to see from them because, listen, I know it's Carson Wentz and the Eagles, and Wentz is a disaster right now. But you have to remember that the Seahawks were historically terrible in the first half of the season on defense. So just the idea of getting to mediocre. Look at it like this whole thing, Money. Let Russ cook. Okay, 5-star event here in the kitchen. Now you just got to make the rest of the building okay, and you're going to be fine. And that's what I think they're doing right now. Okay defense, great offense. To the NFC title game we go. I feel it now.
Yeah, well, this was the debate we had last week when you were saying who should you put at number 4. And I slotted the Seahawks there, and one of the reasons was, and this is not me saying, hey, I'm right, check me out, but I think at this point
feels
in the season,
like it.
I do like it, though. We got to look at schedule. And to me, that's an important part of the Power Rankings calculus because if you can be the number 1 seed, there is only one spot that gets the bye this year. And that is a huge advantage over the rest. So when you look at the remaining schedule for the Seahawks, who are now just a game back of the Saints on the loss column, Giants, Jets, Washington football team, and then 2 division opponents, Rams at home, 49ers on the road. I do not think with an MVP candidate in Russell Wilson, the uncoverable in DK Metcalf, as you mentioned, a defense that only needs to move to league average based on how this offense is playing. The Seahawks, I would be look, I won't be surprised if they're number 1. I can see the Saints losing a game, maybe 2, considering their quarterback issues. Like that was masked by a bad, obviously, situation for the Broncos at how bad Taysom Hill was throwing that ball. So, to me, the Seahawks are still in play for that number 1 spot. Let's stay in that top quadrant here, Dan, and get to the Bills.
Yeah, I like Buffalo, and that's why they've stayed in the top 10 virtually the entire season for me. But I guess to me, when I look at this team, and you saw it again on Sunday, that Josh Allen is going to make a play, throw a ball, put the ball on the ground, and give the other team a chance to get back into games. And when you do it against a lesser team, you're going to get away with it. But you worry about the Bills and their variance, and you look ahead. Because we're now, like you're saying, Money, at this point where we can look at the schedule and look ahead to what we see from these teams in January potentially. Making those mistakes against the Chargers, you can get away with it. Making those mistakes against the teams that are above them on this power rankings, I don't see it. So they could, if they're in the AFC title game, not shocked. If they're one and done in the playoffs, not shocked. I'm still kind of figuring out this Buffalo team.
So I'll just operate from recency bias because the Chargers just played the Bills. And look, they forced 3 turnovers and they got 3 points out of it because their offense couldn't execute. There were a lot of drops. Uncharacteristic drops from Keenan Allen, who did not have a drop all season long. He had 2 big ones in that game. You had Hunter Henry on 2 third downs with 2 uncharacteristic drops. You had Austin Eckler that would have streaked to the end zone had Herbert found him with a pinpoint pass, and he's been pretty darn accurate all season on the blitz. When you're watching this tape, what do you see? A ton of blitz. So as you said, if you get into a contest with a team that has a quarterback that's comfortable operating under pressure, those plays are there to be made. The second half of that, Dan, you spoke to it. Josh Allen was careless with the football. His passes were not on point, but, and this is the big but for the Bills, He's such a Swiss Army knife. Take your NFL cliche, queen on the chessboard, Swiss Army knife. It wasn't there in the passing game, so he just used his legs. And they had to commit so many resources to that threat that they were able to gash him in the running game. And whether that was Moss or Singletary, they both did it to the tune of darn near 200 yards. So I'm with you. There's very little in the middle, I think. The Bills are a boom or bust team, and I don't think we'll be surprised whichever direction it leans.
You mentioned the running game. That's so important. If they could keep that going and make that a big part of their offense, then you take a little heat off Josh Allen, and the offense becomes that much more dynamic. When you go 2 in on Josh Allen, I feel like you're going to get burned eventually.
Yeah, and again, just if you're going to point to that one game real quick to put a button on it, Joey Bosa was otherworldly. He's one of the three best defensive players in the league, and he just had one of those games that you won't see from any other player. I would not suspect that's going to be a normal situation for the Bills when it comes to trying to keep Josh Allen upright.
Let's stick a pin in this game, Money, because we got to talk about the Chargers a little bit later, okay?
We do? Okay.
Yeah, we got it.
Let's finish this up with the Rams, the team you had at number 4. You made a case for them at number 4, and they let you down.
They did. They did let me down, and I didn't feel entirely comfortable putting them at 4. I was upfront about that. Feels more like where Los Angeles is as a team right now, and we saw it again against the Niners, that this is an elite defense. This is a top 3 defense in the league with New Orleans and Pittsburgh. But at some point, this offense has to, find some level of consistency. And a lot of this falls on the quarterback, Jared Goff. I thought it was interesting that Sean McVay made it a point to open his comments to the media after the loss to San Francisco by saying his quarterback needs to take better care of the ball. And it's turnovers that are killing the Rams. So I think that's something, hopefully, and this is a great head coach, and I think there are guys in that building in the offensive side of the ball. They're not the 2017 Rams offense anymore, but I think they should be able to clean up the turnovers, because the defense and a solid they're like almost the mirror of the Seahawks, where it's like they're a great defense, the Rams, and they just need a middling offense, and it's not always there for them.
So I think beyond the offense, for me, it's just one individual. It's Jared Goff. He has played poorly for quite a while now, for about a quarter of the season. Over his last 4, you look at it, and it's 6 picks, and I think it's 5 fumbles, 3 of them lost. You see the line here against the 49ers. The one thing about the 49ers is you always have to be careful with division opponents, just because they know you so well, and you have such good coaches in this division that it's easy to see how one can get the upper hand against the other in any given week. I don't like the whole, the Rams always beat up the Seahawks, so you can't take the Seahawks over the Rams. Well, the 49ers always beat up the Rams, so you just got to reckon. No, that's not how it works. There's different personnel. There's different injury situations. There's different things on the line for each team going into each week. You can separate it. The one thing you can point to, though, is familiarity. And what we saw come out of the Super Bowl from 2018 is a blueprint, right, of how to beat this team and how to get Jared Goff uncomfortable. And I think more and more teams have done that over the last month. And that's something that I think I would be awfully concerned about if I were Sean McVay, is how do you get Jared Goff right?
Yeah, and in general, this game, Niners-Rams, is interesting to me. 2 teams that paid a big money for quarterbacks, Jimmy G and Jared Goff, and you wonder if there's buyer's remorse at this point of the game.
Yeah, no doubt. Look, it'll be a great one against the Cardinals. We'll get to that also a little bit later, because, boy, talk about a pivotal contest for each of those teams in the NFC West. When we return, it was a brief but special stint. Teams that spent a second in the top tier of Take It a Tumble to Quadrant 2 will peek into a pair of pirates that took the plunge this week. Back on Power Rankings, presented by the long-lasting power of Energizer. Here's our look at Quadrant 2, teams 9 through 16. And Dan, let's dive right in. We mentioned a pair of Pirates slipped out of the first tier, and that would be the Bucs and the Raiders. So let's start with Tampa. And concern level, panic level for you after they drop a contest to the Chiefs.
The panic level is about a 6.5 out of 10, and going up. Yeah, it's something feels off here. And I remember about a month ago talking about the only thing that could stop the Bucs is if they peaked, because they were playing at such a high level and people were penciling them in to the Super Bowl. And now it just feels like everything's falling apart. And what I'm looking to see here as we go down the stretch here, the final 4 games of their season, and of course they have the bye this week, is what is the dynamic between the quarterback and the coach. Bruce Arians and Tom Brady seemed like a nice match back in the spring, but some comments in the media, some of the play calling that might not match up with Tom Brady's skill set that he's built up over 20 years makes you wonder, how is this all going to play out? And here's a tweet from our own Mike Silver. It seems like Bruce is not protecting Brady in the media either, and you just wonder, a proud guy like TB12, how that's going over.
Yeah, and you see what Mike Silver, kind of posted here, and that's that Bruce Arians putting it back on Tom because, I think people like me, and I've said this for the last few weeks since I was able to be part of that UK broadcast of the Bucs-Rams game.
All right, we got it. You're successful. I mean, at what point?
No. Listen, I got one of them special NFL stat packs that makes me sound smart. I'm smart. I just have respect because I get to see, Tom Brady's 0 for 19 on passes that are 20-plus air yards. Well, when has Tom Brady been a guy that's launching 20-plus air yards over the last 10 years? That's not what he does.
That's Randy Moss 2007 stuff.
Exactly. So what are you doing, Bruce Arians? Freaking tailor your offense for arguably the greatest quarterback of all time, or someone's in that conversation, instead of having him at 43 adapt to what you want to do. 7 picks over the last 4 games. And by the way, those are playoff teams, right? It's the Chiefs, it's the Saints, it's the Rams, and the one game where he lit it up was after a performance like that against, the Saints, I feel bad for the next opponent. Yeah, it was the Panthers, okay? And they're good, but I'm a little more concerned about those other 3 teams that they would likely run into in the playoffs. So I still think the talent's there. Just tighten it up, man. Tighten it up.
Yeah, I think they showed their ceiling, though. I think they are just a step below those teams. And we could put it on Arians, and maybe that's fair to do so. But Tom Brady is 43, and he did show signs of slippage last year as well, in my opinion. So should we be shocked that maybe this offense isn't as good as we thought?
Right there is where I'm going. What about the Colts? Dropped a big one against the Titans.
Oh, you mean the Colts? No. It's too hard. Anyway, Colts. I'm not going to get too crazy about that loss to the Titans. DeForest Buckner was arguably the best move any team made in the offseason, including Tom Brady acquisition by the Bucs. And when you take him out of the lineup, he missed the game. That really freed up Tennessee to do whatever it wanted, especially in the running game where Derrick Henry had 140 yards and 3 touchdowns by halftime. So that you're going to get Buckner back. So I'm not going to get too worked up about it. Anthony Costanzo, their tackle, also went out with an injury. And we know, and Money, is the voice of the Chargers, that Phillip Rivers is a statue. They need to protect him or they're in trouble.
Hey, if it's clean, he's going to pick you apart. If it's muddy, it's going to get ugly. And that's just the way it is. So it'll kind of probably depend on what their path is in the playoffs. But I'm going to kind of drop one spot. So we'll do the top 3 of this top quadrant, or the second quadrant here. And I'm going to go Raiders, Dan. And since you gave a 6.5 level of panic on the Bucs, I'm going to up that to an 8 for the Raiders. That was a game they had to win because I firmly believe that 10 wins is what you will need to get into the postseason in the AFC, and that means they've got to close at 4-1. And I just don't see it. My bigger concern, look, Derek Carr was terrible in the game, right? He threw a pick 6. He lost 3 fumbles. I think he fumbled 5, right? So that's one thing, and we can get into that and my issues with Derek Carr taking care of the football. But my bigger issue is this defense has not been good all year, and the Falcons absolutely torched them. And so that's my bigger concern is, can this defense play at a level where they can win 4 of their last 5? And I don't know. It's not that I don't know. I think the answer is no.
Okay, and that's fair because we also have a little bit of history with the John Gruden Raiders team last year that also started 7-4 and then went in the tank.
6-4, yeah.
Yeah, 6-4, and went in the tank, and then that was it. That said, I dropped them out of the top 10 because how can you not? How can you not do it when you get a 43-6 bomb dropped on you? But I'm not bailing on the Raiders, and I know they're a team because Derek Carr. There's something about Derek Carr that people will always have doubts about him and the team that he QBs, and
yeah, he's pretty
I
average.
get that. But here's the thing. When he has a bad game like this, it has a way of just wiping everyone's memory clean of how incredible he was against the Chiefs 6 days earlier. He played out of his mind. He went punch for punch with the greatest QB on the planet, Patrick Mahomes. The idea that that guy is going to be replaced by this version of Derek Carr for the rest of the year, I'm not buying it. I think they also have a nice setup here with the Jets in Week 13. And I know, yes, they went East to play the Jets last year this time, and the Jets spanked them, and that was really the beginning of the end for the Raiders. I don't think it happens. I think they get back on the horse.
Look at that.
They got the tiebreaker on the Browns. I think the Raiders are okay. Hang in there, silver and black fans.
No, and just real quick, because you're pushing back at me, now I'm going to push back at you. Derek Carr against the Chiefs was the outlier. That was the outlier performance. That, we've seen an average Derek Carr for 7 years. We have not seen the guy that can climb in the ring and trade punches with Patrick Mahomes. We've seen that maybe 3 or 4 times in his entire career. So now look, we haven't seen that version against the Falcons either. But I just say if you're in the middle and you have a league way below average defense, that's my issue.
Do you think just because there's a global pandemic that I can't find David Carr and head him over to your place over there in Seal Beach to do some damage?
He's in Bakersfield, man. They're not allowed over here in the beach cities. They got to stay out in Baco. I'm not concerned.
Wow. Digging in deep on the cards.
Oh, yeah. All right. We got a QB redemption tale, a big-bodied back, and a head coach. Well, he can beat up your head coach. We take it to Tennessee when the voice of the Titans, Mike Keith, joins us next.
Swings it out right side. Henry to the 10, to the 5, to the end zone. Touchdown, Titans! Derrick Henry catches a TD for the first time in 2020. Gives Henry on the right side, trying to get to the corner. Henry, touchdown, Titans! Had to wait for the signal, but the big man got it inside the pylon for a big 6. Here's Henry on the right side to the 10. Henry to the 5. Henry to the end zone. Touchdown, Titans! That's 3 for double 2. Derrick Henry.
Oh, he's the best. Top of the pops on Rocky Top, the voice of the Titans, pretty much forever. Tennessee, 8-3 and playing really, really good football, coming off a big victory over the Colts. Let's bring in Mike Keith, voice of the Titans. Touchdown, Titans. Oh, we love it, Mike. Thanks for taking the time out. How are you?
Money, Dan, thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
You know, by the Money, with your background in music, there is a quiet, loud dynamic to Mike's iconic call that summons memories of the Pixies and Nirvana. He kind of lulls you in with the touchdown call, and then bang, here comes the announcement. It's very fun and exciting.
Thank you.
We've been discussing it for a while now, Mike, with the Titans, and I think, and it was a weird kind of wonky game against the Colts. If they don't drop that one, I think they are solidified in the top 5, and they've just kind of been hanging out there. Just let's start there and kind of what happened in that game, and whether or not that is of serious concern, because it was the other team that's atop the AFC South that they lost to.
It was of concern because everything that had gone wrong for the Titans, even while winning, showed up in that particular game. And when they couldn't get Derrick Henry going, and when they were unable to keep the ball and people got pressure on Ryan Tannehill, and then defensively, the Titans weren't able to get off the field on third down. They had trouble in the red zone. Suddenly you're saying, okay, do we have some fundamental problems that are not going to be correctable? But Money, what's really interesting about that game, that was the 6th game for the Titans in 30 days. After all of the COVID stuff and the fact that they had a Thursday game on the back end of that, they got very little practice during that time. They had a bunch of walkthroughs. They felt like they were out of sync. And so the last 2 weeks, they have been in a normal routine. They have gotten that extra practice time that you get for a Sunday game. And suddenly some things have come together for them, particularly on defense, and the offense appears to be back on track as well.
You know, speaking of the offense, Ryan Tannehill has had another really solid year for the Titans. Just one of the great moves the franchise has made in the past decade. They have some issues up front this year, obviously. Terrell Luan out for the year. Tyson Brilo went out for the year. They've had some issues on the interior with guys staying healthy. And you're seeing Tannehill get hit a lot. I mean, how much of that is a concern, and is that something they think they can get under control, protect Tannehill better?
Real concern. Dan, I think that's a big factor because our quarterbacks got sacked 56 times last year. And so what they've done is they're moving the pocket around. They're taking advantage of Tannehill's mobility, really trying to use him in the best way possible and help the offensive line. They're also giving some of the offensive linemen help. And I think that's something that they understand fundamentally they're going to have to do with Saffold hurting, with Lewan out, with Kelly hurting. You know, you've got the center, Ben Jones, is hurting. So they're going to have to kind of keep this thing together. But protection, yes, a big deal because they've got to keep Tannehill upright if they're going to have a chance to be successful down the stretch.
Mike, the old cliche was, run the ball, stop the run. That's how you win in the playoffs. And certainly you got one half of that, as dominant as any team in the league. But it seems like things have shifted a little bit. And it's, you better get after the passer. You better be able to sack the quarterback or at least get him off his spot and make life tough. What about the pass rush? And kind of, because that certainly was exposed, like you said, in that game against the Colts where Rivers was awfully comfortable back there.
And then he was not comfortable last Sunday. They did some different things. And I think that was a big factor. We saw the Titans defense, and we knew this defense was going to have to improve throughout the year because they had several big changes. But they brought pressure from different places. And because they could take some chances up front, they needed the secondary to hold up. And so communication is key. Making the tackle is key. All of those little things between the front and the back of a defense, and that's coach speak, I know. But it really was a problem for the Titans because of the injuries in the secondary. They didn't feel like they could take chances up front. Now that secondary has been together for 4 games, and even though Adoree Jackson is not yet back, and we're not sure when he will be, they're playing together, which gives them the ability to manufacture some pressure. That's what they did on Sunday, and that's probably what they're going to have to continue to do.
Mike, on offense, Derrick Henry, you've been calling his games his whole career. How special is it to watch him on a week-by-week basis, what he's able to do? Sometimes he looks like a man against boys.
I should pay him, right, Dan? I mean,
yeah.
Money knows this too. When you have these guys that are doing these things, they make you look good and they make your job easy. It's a thrill to be his announcer because he is a total professional in everything that he does, from his approach to his consistency in practice to his desire to improve overall. I'm going to tell you what's really interesting about Derrick Henry is if he lines up a 200-yard game somewhere in here, which is obviously not crazy, we may be talking about the next 2,000-yard rusher. He could threaten it down the stretch. And if that happens, I wonder if he doesn't start to ease into the MVP conversation for real, because if that happens, if he's putting up numbers like that, the Titans are probably still winning down the stretch too. So winning team, big numbers, big name player. I think you need to be considering him as a candidate right now. I think he could move to the top tier if he could start to threaten 2,000 yards. And that's not going to be easy, but it is Derrick Henry, so nothing's impossible.
Yeah. Well, we know the team won't look ahead, but hey, we can. You got games against Jacksonville and one in there against the Lions. The Texans have not been great at stopping the run, so certainly not out of the realm of possibility. But the task at hand, an awesome game this week. 2 8-3 teams tangling there. Cleveland versus Tennessee. He'll be on the call. If you have a chance to track it down, if you're not there in the greater Nashville area, you got to find Mike Keith on the satellite online somewhere, because it's the best. I completely believe he is the best in the business. We always love it when we get to hear it. Mike, we appreciate it. Good luck the rest of the way, and hopefully we'll be able to catch up with you down the road.
Thank you for the kind words, and thanks for having me on.
All right, here it is, our third quadrant, 17 through 24, and a team that is up 2 spots. Let's focus on that number 19 there, Dan, the 49ers, and whether or not we think they can creep even higher, say, I don't know, into the top 14 and be part of the NFC playoff picture.
Yeah, there's a lot of buzz building around the Niners right now as a team to watch that can maybe steal a playoff spot. And I see it, but the reason I didn't jump them too much beyond the 2 spots was I've been down this road before. It feels like deja vu when they had their first wave of injuries and then they started playing better. And it's like, okay, watch out for the Niners. And then they went into a funk and they bottomed out against the Packers on Thursday Night Football. But here we are again. I think 2 things to keep in mind. Deebo Samuel, first of all. This guy, he's healthy, and he's one of those dudes, he just looks different with the ball in his hands, and he runs through tacklers, and they find ways to get him the ball because, and this is the other point, Kyle Shanahan is a genius offensive mind. So if you combine these 2 aspects of the team, I think it covers up for Nick Mullins and some of the other issues they might have because of the injuries and all the other setbacks they've had this year.
Well, I think you've identified the number one component, and that is that when you don't have a roster that lines up on paper with your opponent, and you feel like there's a bit of a gap there. And look, when you lose your best defensive player, half of your defensive line, half of your defensive secondary, your starting quarterback, your best player on offense, it can start to kind of mount up against you. But Shanahan's that good. He's just that good. And when you look at the remaining schedule, again, this is the game I'm going to start playing here on Power Rankings. You're talking about 3 playoff teams right now, Buffalo, Arizona, Seattle, and 2 teams in, I guess you could say Washington's a playoff team right now, or at least borderline, and Dallas. Can you win 4 of those 5 games? And if you beat Arizona and Seattle, that's just splitting against your divisional opponents, which I think we could see Kyle Shanahan do it. So I think it's, for me, they're in that right spot. That's the sweet spot for them. I will not be surprised if they beat Buffalo. I won't be surprised if they win out. And at the same time, because of the talent gap that you feel like is there due to injury, if they don't get these bodies healthy, I won't be surprised, if they lose out or if they go 1-4 or something like that. I think it's a really tough team to project.
Yeah, I don't see the extremes on them. I don't see them losing out or 4 or 5. Conversely, I don't see them winning out. I feel like they're going to win 2 or 3 games and it will fall short. But even if they don't make the playoffs and they finish out around 500, it's an amazing coaching job by Shanahan, and it deserves Coach of the Year consideration.
That's a reminder of how important a coach can be along with talent. We always say talent wins, but man, coaches are darn important in the National Football League. I know you like when people say that, Dan. Imagine all year you have cost the boss piles of cash and stripped her or him of his or her dignity, and yet You're getting a Christmas bonus. That's the NFC East. 5 wins, maybe 6 will get it. Who you got? Up next is who we got. All right, back on Power Rankings, presented by the long-lasting power of Energizer. It is our final quadrant, 25 through 32. But most interestingly, you see it right there, 25, 26, 27. It is the NFC East quadrant. And before we gaze into the future, how about we get a glimpse of the ghost of the NFC East past?
Ooh.
Who is your pick? Which team would be your selection to emerge victorious with the NFC East crown?
I mean, I would be really bad at power rankings if I didn't have the Eagles as my pick.
That's true. See, I'm struggling. You can see me. I'm scratching my nose. I'm looking down because I told our producers that I'm taking the Giants here.
Jones on the keep. And Daniel Jones showing his legs, showing his speed, and Jones into the end zone for the touchdown.
Embrace the chaos at this point in the NFC East. I'm all in on the Cowboys now. Got to win on Thursday, though. You're going to make me look super dumb.
I'm going to make you look super dumb because I'm going to take the other sideline.
Here's a play made by the defense for the touchdown. Montez Sweat.
Trying to figure out who's going to win the NFC East is not like bowling. There are no rules.
I like that.
There are no rules.
Clearly, Money got a final cut there because Money's been as confused as the rest of the world in the NFC East, but that's not how it was portrayed there. Not at all.
Well, you did put yourself out there. You said the Cowboys are going to make you look real dumb, and I then said yes, and so am I, because I'm taking the Washington football team, and they humiliated them for everyone. 33 million people to see on Thanksgiving.
That was so bad. The Cowboys, Shame on you, Cowboys, for putting the power rankings out like that. But I won't get fooled again, and that's why I have them beneath the Washington football team, and I don't know if they get beyond 26 from this point onward. They've burned me.
So who wins? Let's make Dan look dumb again. Here we go.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't matter what happens. My voice will be edited to get the wrong answer. But I think I'm finally going to come around to where you are on this one, Money. I think I have the Giants ahead of Washington, but with the Daniel Jones injury, let's go with Washington because Alex Smith has put in a nice floor on the quarterback play there, and then their front seven just goes and gets teams that can't protect the quarterback, and that's a lot of teams in the league.
Yeah. I think I could channel your Around the NFL podcast partner, Greg Rosenthal, in the moment here and say something like, well, in their DVOA, 7th ranked, Washington's the team you want to run with. But I'm going to go ahead and take. It was pretty good, right? I'm going to go ahead and take your lead here, Dan, and I'm going to take the Giants.
What?
even though the Washington football team made me look brilliant in my sweet Thanksgiving themed sweater, if that's what the theme was for those of you that know. But I'm going Giants. Why? Let's look at their last 6. They're 4-2. The 2 losses, Bucs and Eagles by a combined 3 points. This is a defense that plays hard. I mean, they get after it, and they have an identity, and that's we're going to outgrind you. And I know there's no Daniel Jones, and look, that's a big loss. Colt McCoy, though, he was all right. I think it's kind of like Alex Smith. Yeah, he was all right. So I feel, and look, I'm looking at the final schedule. I got it right here. Seattle, Arizona, Cleveland, Baltimore, Dallas. You know what they need out of that? 1 win. They need 1 win because they swept the Washington football team. They'll both finish with 5 wins, and the Giants will have the tiebreaker. That's where I'm going this week.
You know what? That would be kind of amazing. So I'm rooting for the chaos. But I think you're picking the wrong time to bail on Washington. I think they have 6 wins in them. They run away with the division.
Woo! 6 wins. Man, that is the bold statement of the week. Bold statement of the week. I gotta take a breather here. Okay. All right, it's time for Power Moves presented by the long-lasting power of Energizer. Let's bring it in. The conqueror of calculus, the premier predictive analyst in all the land. It's Cynthia Freeland with her latest findings. And it's an all-points presentation on the postseason, is it not? Cynthia, we're 5 weeks away from the playoffs, and I believe you're going to make some sense of what we like to call the nonsensical, and that is wild card spots. So why don't you get us started in the NFC?
In the NFC right now, it is the Rams who get that final spot, number 7 this season. Kind of like last season when had there been 7, they would have been able to go in. It's really going to come down to consistency at the quarterback position because their defense is nasty. We know that it's great, and defense really helps. Defense and a strong run game is one of the ways, the main prescriptive ways in order to be predictive into who will win games. But we've seen some inconsistent play from Jared Goff. So keeping him clean, keeping him away from pressure, that's going to be the key for the Rams to hold on and make it as number 7. They have a difficult schedule with the rest of the NFC West really still left to play.
It's that defense. Yeah, that's what's going to carry them, which continues to be strange after what we've seen in Sean McVay, his career with the Rams to this point, but that's where we are.
I guess my takeaway from that, Cynthia, is I would have thought the Rams might be the 5. If they're the 7, that means they're going to get jumped by the Bucs, who will end up having to be 2 games better than them because, of course, they won the head-to-head, and perhaps the Cardinals or the Vikings. So that might be a little bit of a wobbly car going into the postseason. Let's shift.
The machine knows money. The machine knows.
Look, the machine always knows. I've learned my lesson many a times from the machine. Do not question it. How about the AFC and whether or not we see one of these teams that's on the outside, because there's some pretty darn impressive looking rosters there that are not in the top 7 right now.
Well, the scheduling gods are favorable for the Ravens to make it into the playoffs, currently on the outside looking in. If you look to see some good matchups against some teams that are not so great, are still left on their schedule. So in this one, it's really going to come down to how they can keep that run game strong. Right here, you're looking at Justice Hill, who's pretty deep on their depth chart, but really performed really well, kind of maybe surprisingly for some, against the Steelers on that Wednesday nighter. But to me, the interesting thing here is, will that run game stay strong? We've seen a bunch of injuries to their defense, namely Calais Campbell. That's been kind of a problem for them. But if they can keep the run game consistent, then they will be in the playoffs. No big deal. No sweat.
Yeah, you got to see what's going on with Lamar Jackson and his availability with COVID-19. But if you get a win this week and then you pop the Browns for the second time next week and you got the tiebreaker, watch out Cleveland even, who you think would be safe.
Right. That is interesting. So, sweet Cleveland, does that push Cleveland? Let's just kind of maybe dig into a little bit deeper the bottom part of that AFC playoff picture, because it looks like it's going to take 10 wins probably to even get number 7. How do you see that shaking out, and who does sneak into that final spot?
Well, the Colts sneak into the final spot, mostly because the Dolphins had kind of an unexpected loss 2 weeks ago. It was really coming down to the Dolphins or the Colts at this point, because, by the way, the Browns kind of already have a nice solidified base of wins to draw from. So it's the Colts who, yes, they have a couple of tough ones left. It's not going to be smooth walking for them, right? Like, they do have Houston twice left. It's going to be interesting because those divisional matchups are always challenging. But right now, it looks like they will be the last ones in because of that great defense, especially their pass defense, their ability to rush the passer. I mean, you saw Darius Leonard do it right there to Aaron Rodgers, right? So it's a really good defense, and the offense is going to be able to get them enough to kind of slide into the last spot of the playoffs.
I think it's time to change. Now that we have the extra team and all these teams are essentially at the same level, it's time to alter the name. Wild card doesn't cut it anymore. It's now insane card. Who's with
insane
me?
Card?
Yeah, the insane card playoffs.
Right. So like insane is a step up from wild.
To me, it is. Yes.
Okay.
Right.
You know what?
Would that be the 7 then?
I'm gonna run that up the
Insane?
flagpole, and I'm gonna see who salutes it, Dan. That's what I'm gonna do. Okay.
I'm not feeling good based on the reaction here.
You want to dig deeper, and still going, Cynthia, and you want to get your math on, you can do it at NFL.com/Freeland. Get all of Cynthia's findings, all that great game theory. It's available 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, because, well, the internet never closes. All right, up next, the installment from this hour of programming that has all the heads talking. Impact matchups, 3 games pitting 2 teams that'll see the most movement when we return to reconcile the week that was in our next compelling production of Power Rankings. Well, a reminder, there is no Thursday Night Football tonight, but a big one on Tuesday for 2 teams desperate for a win. The Cowboys take on the Ravens in Baltimore. Pre-game coverage starts Tuesday at 6 p.m., followed by kickoff at 7:30 Eastern on NFL Network, Fox, and Amazon Prime Video. Dan, we get the impact matchup. 3 games we think will have a huge impact on next week's Power Rankings. pending the outcome, and we get started with a divisional game, and there's probably going to be a lot of divisional games, or at least playoff implication games. Rams-Cards, Kyler Murray escapability versus Aaron Donald. That's the highlight of this one. I can't wait to see it. Teams feel like maybe they cracked the code a little bit. They're blitzing Kyler Murray over these last 40% of his dropbacks. Prior to that, it was 17% when we were talking about him as an MVP candidate. He has not been great. These last 4, they should be on a 4-game losing streak were it not for the Hail Murray. Meanwhile, the 49ers picked apart the Rams with quick passing underneath. So you do that with all that speed that he's got at the wide receiver position, and his escapability should be a heck of a battle between the Cards offense and the Rams defense.
I totally agree. And I just want to be sure that Kyler Murray is healthy. He hurt his shoulder in that Thursday night game. Maybe he was just bracketed by a great Belichick scheme, or maybe they're still trying to protect him a little bit. He needs to be that dual threat for the Cardinals to succeed.
Second one, Browns versus Titans. We talked to Mike Keith a little bit earlier about the Titans. And look, it's the return of Myles Garrett. And you saw what Joey Bosa was able to do against Josh Allen and forcing 3 turnovers against the Bills. That's the kind of wrecking machine that Myles Garrett is as well. These are 2 teams that want to run the ball more than anybody else. And which one of them does it better? The Browns, first in rushing, or the Titans, third in rushing? But the interesting one here, Dan, for me, is it should come down to Baker Mayfield and Kevin Stefanski letting him cut loose, because you're talking about the 30th ranked pass attack of the Browns versus the Titans' 28th ranked pass defense.
Yeah, I am somewhat of a skeptic of the Browns at this point. They've done a good job beating who they should beat, but their losses are against good teams. Who are the Browns truly? Here's a great test against the Titans. And yeah, Baker Mayfield is going to have to win them some games down the stretch. Does he have it in him? I'm not sure.
They're just doing that to spite Sessler. What a bad guy. 49ers versus the Bills. We just mentioned Bosa got after Josh Allen, forced him into 2 of their 3 turnovers. We know Robert Saleh can scheme it up and do the same. The Bills defense, we talked about this earlier too. They blitzed the heck out of Herbert, and the plays were there to beat it. But dropped passes by Keenan Allen, Hunter Henry, errant throws by Herbert to Austin Eckler that would have gone for a touchdown did them in. The Bills' run D, terrible, versus the most creative rush attack in the league with the return of Mostert. Kind of excited about this one.
Yeah, I think this is a really good game. I think we're going to see another big Deebo Samuel game. And the Niners are essentially, these are like playoff games for the 49ers. They can't lose. Yeah. So that's a tough assignment for Buffalo.
All right, a couple teams that we have not really discussed up to this point. We call it honest assessments, and we pick your brain, Dan, as to why you placed these teams in their particular positions on power rankings. So let's start. It was ugly, but it was a win, and it was the Patriots knocking off the Cardinals, and your state of the Patriots as it stands right now.
They're not special anymore. We've kind of known that for a while now, but they also have Bill Belichick. It's similar to how I said that I thought Kyle Shanahan deserves Coach of the Year consideration. Belichick is not going to get it, but this is going to end up being an 8 or 9 win team that probably should win 5 or 6 games with the talent level they have. I'm not buying in on them, but I respect the game up there.
I'm kind of excited about the Vikings. You know, this is pretty good, kind of what they got going right now, and it's a fun watch.
Yeah, and how about Kirk Cousins? Like, you look at the numbers the past month, and statistically, he's been as good as any quarterback in the league, which is pretty special considering he was on the Jameis Winston 30-30 pace not so long ago. So if Dalvin Cook can stay healthy, and he's been pretty banged up, that will really decide it for me. Money, I want to tee you up on one here. And I want to bring back one of our old segments from last year. It was a very tough week in Chargers land. It's a segment I like to call, and now the voice of the Chargers talks about what's wrong with the Chargers, ellipses, without getting fired. And I look at that old stock photo of Money with the glasses.
Look at that. And hanging down on top of the forehead. Oh,
I don't know. That is almost like an emo Money right there. Money,
right?
Anthony Lynn. Again, Money's the voice of the Chargers, so just keep that in mind, everybody. Anthony Lynn has probably his lowest moment as head coach, I'm going to argue, the way the last 30 seconds of that game played out.
Well, I think it's, the last probably 2 minutes of each half, right? So the 30 seconds of the game, the final 30 seconds here, Justin Herbert on a 4th and 27, just a brilliant play by perhaps or likely your rookie of the year to throw this Hail Mary to Tyron Johnson. And look, was it likely that they were going to win the game? No, but it was still possible. They've got a 1st and goal from the 2, and inexplicably they run without a timeout, Austin Eckler. And all of a sudden, 25 seconds runs off the clock. And then here on the final play, it was an audible And clearly the communication didn't make it to the offensive line because they're dropping into a pass set when Herbert's trying to go forward, and it was a comedy of errors to close the game.
We also missed the field goal team running on and off the field. Put the Benny Hill music
Allen going
on.
off the field, field goal team coming on. It was certainly an ugly finish, an ugly game. And look, he's still the head coach, which means that Tom Telesco and John Spanos, they're comfortable with trying to let him right the ship. So we'll see whether or not he can do it with the Patriots. But yes, not a good look. And I think it's just to some degree a microcosm of the season, right? It feels more like an 8-3 team when you look at the roster than 3-8. Up next, GATA.
Well done, buddy.
Acronym. Get after them. Your tweets discussing Dan's declarations like, yikes, this is really bad, are ahead.
He's getting that Chargers paycheck in 2 weeks. No issues here.
Power rankings. Let's get to it, Dan. The critics are chiming in. I see the Bucs flag. So, do the Bucs not exist anymore? We have literally the best offense in the NFL, and our defense is balanced. This is obviously a joke.
Oh, is this a joke? Is your tweet a joke? Were you too close to the cannon fire recently? What are you seeing over the last month that tells you that this is the best offense in the NFL? I can't. Money, what's next?
Well, my issue, too, is, by the way, it's not literally. It's not first in points. It's not first in yards. So I don't know what he's saying.
There's
Sam
a
Boss
bunch of
writes,
problems.
Yo, Dan, just curious how you justify moving the Hawks up 4 spots after a win against the lowly Eagles.
I can't get mad at Sam Boss. It seems like he's coming from it from a respectful angle. I just really love the way the Seahawks have played, not just last week, but the last couple weeks on defense, as we talked about. That's all they needed to do. Get average. That's where they're at now.
Oh, I love a good insult like this. True story. These rankings are meaningless because polls aren't used to decide the playoffs in the NFL.
I mean, what does that mean for your tweet then? If your tweet's about my power rankings.
Thanks for that update, James. And thanks to you for watching this holiday power rankings special Thursday production. Next week, we're going to be all wonky again. As instead of our standard Tuesday, we're going on Wednesday. So please tell all who will listen. Will ya? Hope to see you in 6 days.